how to navigate the world of teaming and subcontracting. I'm your host, Rich Thielen, General Manager here at Centurion. I appreciate everyone joining us for what will be an information-packed session. A little bit of background on Centurion. We track 20,000 plus federal government opportunities across multiple vertical markets. We provide leading-edge business intelligence that informs your business development efforts. Our Opportunity Assessment Now tool enables you to perform detailed predictive analysis of your pipeline that results in an increased win probability. We offer custom research and analysis, pipeline development, along with custom business development training. These services have been created with one thing in mind, helping you, our clients, win more business. This is the third in our Government Contractor webinar series to be conducted by Mike Lisagor, Centurion's Government Business Development subject matter expert. Mike founded CelerityWorks in 1999 and has been helping executives accelerate their revenue growth for decades. We are recording today's event. An on-demand copy as well as a copy of the slides will be available later on today on Centurion's website. Finally, in consideration of your busy schedules, we'll be continuing this discussion at our company LinkedIn profile right after the conclusion of today's webinar. So without further ado, Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Rich, and the hundreds of you who have joined us today. This morning I'm going to concentrate on the first of 6 key business growth topics. I'll cover many of the questions from the registration form, and we'll be happy to respond via email or at our LinkedIn group after today's presentation. The process of assembling or joining a team is one of the 7 major elements of a successful capture initiative. There are many reasons why companies team on specific competitions, whether it's single contract award or multiple contract awards. Some of these strategies are because your company does not have the size or past performance to be credible as a prime contractor, to fill a service or solution gap, to round out the team with the necessary technical or management key personnel, and in some cases to take a strong competitor off the street. A few other reasons are to satisfy a client's stated or unstated preference for the involvement of an incumbent company or presence as part of a broader strategic teaming arrangement, as a joint venture, a contractual relationship that allows 2 or more companies to form a peer-to-peer business arrangement, and finally, to fulfill a socioeconomic status requirement for the prime contractor or as a percentage of that contract. The number of teammates is dependent on several factors, including the type of procurement, stated client preference, socioeconomic requirements. I've seen teams with as few as 2 companies and as many as 30. There are numerous ways to find teaming partners. A good place to start is contractors who are already doing business with your target agency, either as a prime or subcontractor. Agency websites and market research services like Centurion's BI Now are also valuable sources, as are agency small business advocates, especially those advocates who are actively advocating for small businesses. The government-run Central Contract Registration website contains a searchable listing of all government contractors and is very useful. Any long-term government marketing strategy should include consistent networking with companies who work with your target agencies or in your service and product areas. Federal agencies set aside a certain number of contracts for small business award, meaning that only small businesses can be the prime contractor and usually must retain 51% of the contract revenue. Small business competitions can be further segmented by socioeconomic status, as shown in this slide. Each of these categories have specific requirements that the company must comply with, such as company size, annual revenue, and the owner's socioeconomic status. Many full and open competitions, meaning any size company can be the prime, specify that the prime contractor set aside a specific percentage of the contract to one or more of these categories. These requirements will benefit your company if you are a small business, or drive your teaming and vendor selection strategy if you are a mid-sized or large company. There are many reasons why so many small businesses, such as 8A, HubZone, Small Disadvantaged, Veteran-Owned, and similar programs fail to successfully graduate into the full and open procurement environment or shrink to a smaller size. Or put another way, there are several steps small businesses should take to transition to a larger competitive company. In my earlier career, I experienced 2 effective graduations, and have others with consulting clients. Among the challenges we had to overcome were inadequate strategic planning processes, the absence of a mature business development, capture, and proposal process, and the resources necessary to compete in a full and open marketplace, a lack of well-defined core competencies or technical discriminators, insufficient support organization infrastructure, lack of experience bidding on full and open bids, an over-reliance on just a few agencies, too few strategic partnerships, including the establishment of relationships with new emerging small businesses able to compete on future set-asides or year recompetes. Speaking of strategic relationships, the Department of Defense has a Mentor-Protégé Program that allows small businesses to be helped by larger contractors. Mentors must have at least one active subcontracting plan and be eligible for federal contracts. Protégés must be one of the following: a small disadvantaged business concern, a qualified organization employing the severely disabled, a woman-owned business, a service-disabled, veteran-owned business, or a HubZone business. Also, many larger companies have their own internal mentor-protégé programs. Mentor firms are solely responsible for selecting their protégés, and a protégé firm may have only one active mentor-protégé agreement. Mentor assistance can include general business management, engineering technical support, developmental assistance, awards of contracts within existing DoD contracts or other contracts on a non-competitive basis, progress payments up to 100%, advance payments, loans, investments in the protégé firm in exchange for ownership interests, and assistance from DoD small business support groups. Make sure that your mentor company describes in writing what resources they are willing to commit to helping you succeed. Also, focus on a few key assistance areas that will make the most difference to your company's growth. Your small business will need to have sufficient internal resources to take advantage of the help a mentor can provide. And mentors should select protégés that are of strategic advantage, for instance, with technical discriminators, socioeconomic status, or agency incumbency. Here is a simple table that you can use to evaluate the competitive and teaming landscape for a specific opportunity. First, develop the winning criteria for subcontractor, teammate, or prime contractor selection before selecting the teammates or prime. These criteria should be based on stated and perceived client needs as a result of reading procurement documentation and client visits. Consider the strategic advantages to your company beyond this competition of teaming with a company. For example, penetration into newly targeted markets or a future strategic prime contractor for larger competitions. Evaluate each candidate company against these criteria to determine the best fit. Avoid teaming just because it's somebody you already know. Team to win. Develop effective statement of works for areas to be subcontracted out. In the early 90s, I did this kind of analysis on a napkin at a restaurant with 3 other BD directors from my company and TRW. It resulted in putting together 8 different teaming combinations for several procurements at the FAA. The results were very successful, and I still have that napkin in a folder somewhere. Being a subcontractor can be very challenging. Having been involved in hundreds of teaming arrangements, I've collected numerous teaming lessons learned. The first key point, of course, is to understand the difference between being a teaming partner and a subcontractor. Prior to contract award, the left 2 boxes on this diagram, you are considered a teaming partner, and your relationship with the potential prime contractor is defined in a formal teaming agreement. After award, you will negotiate a subcontract and be a subcontractor or the prime contractor. It is very important that you get your company's technical role and work percentage clearly defined in writing in a teaming agreement. This is often documented in an Exhibit A to the teaming agreement. Work percentage should reflect a specific percentage or number of staff. Avoid agreements that promise best efforts or goals. These rarely pan out. While relationships greatly influence who you will team with, business associates can be reassigned or leave their company. Having a definitive teaming agreement is one of the few ways you can mitigate this risk. It's a good practice to request a Dun & Bradstreet credit report on a potential small business prime contractor to make sure they will still be in business, able to pay their bills after contract award, and financially credible in the eyes of the client. I only had this happen once, but it was so demoralizing to go through all the work to develop a proposal only to have my prime contractor declared financially unacceptable by the government. Where possible, ask the client what they think of potential teammates. The worst that can happen is they'll decline to comment. Most acquisitions require either the prime contractor or the entire team to provide a certain number of project citations. So try to confirm that the prime has the necessary past performance and relevant project that can cite in the proposal. Unfortunately, if the government changes these requirements in the final RFP, you may have to revisit your teaming strategy and whether the prime contractor can comply. Another teaming tactic is to hire or make a contingent offer to a key project manager or technical expert. Many government acquisitions assume the winning team will hire some or all of the incumbent staff, so this will need to be taken into account as part of your teaming strategy. Discovering whether a potential prime contractor can develop a professional winning proposal is one of the most critical but often overlooked selection criteria. Not that many, even large companies, have a solid proposal development process with sufficient resources. So do your best up front to try to make sure the prime is prepared and committed to the win. Also, discuss pricing strategy up front so you know whether the labor rates you will be expected to bid will fit within your company's pricing model and risk tolerance. I once participated as a strategic subcontractor on 11 competitions with a large, well-known integrator. We were selected because of our strong incumbency in our core agencies. Our team was awarded 8 of these 11, but my company only received actual work on 2. It was a painful lesson about knowing which companies have a reputation for treating their subcontractors fairly, especially on professional services contracts. When you're going to bid as a prime contractor, there are an equally important number of factors to consider. Try to ascertain whether the companies you are teaming with have positive relationships with the client. However, selecting incumbent contractors is not always the holy grail. My operations executive counterpart and I once did a large FBI integration contract with 3 teammates unknown to the client. However, the client determined that our team offered the new approach and personnel they were looking for. This was one of the less common examples of a long shot paying off. Make sure small businesses are financially sound. Conduct teaming meetings to determine whether a teammate actually possesses the key capabilities or personnel you need to win and execute the contract. Confirm they have the necessary project citations and past performance. Discuss pricing strategy up front to ascertain the company's ability to competitively price their designated labor categories or products. Clarify their proposal participation in the teaming agreement. It doesn't do any good to team with a company for their subject matter expertise if that expertise doesn't help write the proposal. Now I'd like to discuss 6 key questions that should be answered in a teaming agreement, and then, upon contract award, further documented in a subcontract. First, Is the subcontractor exclusively aligned with a single prime contractor, or can the subcontractor be part of another competitor's proposal? I have seen a few cases where a company was allowed to be non-exclusive, usually when they have a very niche capability that's highly valued or specified as being required by the client. Otherwise, almost all prime contractors want an exclusive arrangement. Is the subcontractor guaranteed a specific amount of business? How will the subcontractor be paid? What are the subcontractor's intellectual property rights? How will the non-disclosure of proprietary information be handled? Also, should there be a clause that sets reasonable limits on solicitation of each company's employees? Have project milestones and acceptance criteria been clearly defined? So let's assume your team has been awarded a contract. Congratulations. Take a few minutes to celebrate. Now, let's also assume the prime contractor, either you or some other company, has negotiated a contract with the government. The prime will also be negotiating a subcontract with its subcontractors. I have found subcontract negotiations to be among the most difficult aspects of government contracting. The stakes are high, but the rules aren't set in stone. Still, I believe that the success or failure of this part of the process will largely depend on the several factors shown on the next slide. How important is your service or product to the prime contractor? Subcontractors with hard-to-replace subject matter expertise like electricians or database programmers are in a stronger negotiating position than general staffing or call center providers. It is usually easier to negotiate when you have a strong relationship with the end client. Now is also the time when it makes a real difference during tense negotiations for your company executive to have pre-existing relationships with the prime contractor's responsible executives. I recently had a client who became very invested emotionally and financially in bidding a strategically important contract. However, all indications were that their prime contractor was going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to work with. But my client didn't want to pull the plug. Unfortunately, subcontract negotiations were a nightmare, and no tasking has resulted. How ethical, fair, and trustworthy is your prime contractor counterpart? While I've seen many mutually beneficial teaming relationships, I've also had too many clients who were left at the negotiating altar because the only reason the prime selected them for the team was to win the contract, with no intention of following through. Or they meant well, but were then pressured to reduce subcontract labor. These are tough situations to predict and difficult to overcome. Who are you negotiating with? Is it the individual you negotiated the teaming agreement with, or someone else in the prime contractor's materiel department? I strongly recommend documenting any teaming discussions and agreements in formal emails that you send after the fact to your prime contractor counterpart. These become very valuable sources of information when there are disagreements about the meanings of teaming agreement language. A poor teaming agreement is like a shotgun wedding, which is to say, buyer beware. For many years, I assumed that other people I did business with took their commitments as seriously as I did. Unfortunately, this wasn't always the case. So the success of the subcontract negotiation process often reflects the integrity of the teaming process. Basically, there is no reason to believe that a company that refuses to be definitive in a teaming agreement will be any fairer when negotiating a subcontract. My hard-learned rule of thumb is that in the case of reluctant suitors, the sooner you walk away, the better. There are, of course, many other critical components of a successful growth strategy. Here, for instance, are a list of our paid custom online and in-person workshops. I've helped improve the BD profit at over 60 contractors. So please feel free to contact us to discuss your business development, training, or coaching needs. I hope you can join me on February 14th, a Tuesday, when I'll share numerous critical components of successful proposals and many lessons learned. feel free to email one of the individuals shown on this slide for further information. A copy of today's slides will be made available at the web address listed here, and a recording to this session will be uploaded by tomorrow. I'll leave this slide up for the next 5 minutes. You can see there's also a post-meeting discussion link that you could copy down where I'll continue answering questions. Until February 14th, I thank you for your attention and happy hunting.